last species I'm going to talk about, just that is just a dream species of mine to breed, is the Rhino Iguanas, right? We have Diddy and Dixie that are big enough to breed.
Yeah.
Going to be big enough to breed this next year and old enough to breed. And I've loved Rhino Iguanas. I've loved all Cyclura, quite frankly. And I'd like to get more into that world eventually. But they're just such unique reptiles. I mean, they're definitely the most emotionally driven reptile I've ever worked with. They would, Bella will forego food for attention.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Which is so rare, in particular for a reptile to literally, you think of dogs and cats might be that way, right? They would rather have your attention than food, but you don't think that with something cold-blooded in reptiles. But yet Rhino Iguanas, Cyclura in general, are an animal that literally, I can offer Bella food, and if I'm petting her, she will not eat. She would rather be petted than
She'll
eat.
bop her head at the banana or something like
just pet me. Don't give me food, just pet me. And that's amazing. So, and I just think that,
and they have heavy personalities too. So different from one another.
Yeah. We have 4 Cyclura total, and all 4 are radically different than one another. 3 rhinos and 1 Lewis hybrid. I mean, hatching little baby rhinos
makes me want to cry right now.
I couldn't imagine having Diddy and Dixie, and I won't breed Bella because I just will never chance that. I mean, she's been on her own her whole life. I'm her companion, and I'm not going to take any chance of her getting beat up, killed, egg bound, anything like that. So, but Diddy and Dixie have been together since babies. They are unrelated, as unrelated as you could get. And so hopefully they'll have, and we've seen lots of courtship with they'll bobby head each other. They'll
bite
do
the
all
necks,
kinds of,
all
they'll do all stuff. So I'm sure they're going to breed this next year, and we've got to get a nice little lay box for Dixie to dig in, and hopefully, this next year we'll have some Rhino Iguanas. So that wraps up the kind of species that I'm excited about right now. And don't get me wrong, there's tons more. I mean, I could go on for hours
Literally.
of the things that I'd like to breed, but those are the things that kind of came to mind when I was first thinking about like what to talk to about on the podcast. And then, the next topic I was going to talk about was like, if you are getting ready to breed reptiles, pick your project smart. You know what I mean? Remember that your time is an investment. Right? So a lot of times people don't think about that. They don't think about the fact that their time is their investment. And sometimes less is more. Not always. Sometimes more is more. It just depends on the situation, right? But like we keep scaling back projects and can be more net profitable by scaling back. Take, for instance, leopard geckos. 2 years ago, we produced 9,000 leopard geckos. 9,000 leopard geckos. Last year, we produced about 1,500 leopard geckos. We made more money producing 1,500 leopard geckos than we did 9,000 leopard geckos.
Because you almost are creating your own, like, too much supply and not enough demand, right?
Yeah, the price, you have to wholesale more, which is, you're either breaking even or even losing money to get rid of animals because you can't take care of 9,000 babies without scaling up workforce and scaling up. I mean, we were going through $2,700 a week in mealworms 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was
$2,700. Think about that, $10,000 a month just in mealworms. Just in mealworms. That's not the labor force to take care of these animals. So think about that. I mean, your time is money, your investment's money, and your that's all part of it. And sometimes less is more. And you got to think about that. So again, I've said, if you produce 10 clutches and you make $10,000, you're not going to produce 100 clutches and make $100,000. Just doesn't work that way. I mean, you could if you get lucky and you hit the right animals or whatever the case may be. But most of the time, you produce 10 clutches and you make 10,000. You produce 100 clutches and you make 20,000 net, not gross, net. So you've done 10 times the work to make twice the money. Just keep that in mind. I mean, it's something that most reptile people don't talk about, and it's something that I think is pretty important to realize, is that, the sweat equity that we put in, although our labor may be our passion and our love and our hobby, it's still our time and it's still our energy. And,
it still has value.
It still has value. Yeah, exactly. And you just got to think about that when you're going on. So pick your species right, pick your projects right. I am a believer in diversification. I think that, I think you can go one of two ways when it comes to reptile breeding. Is you can go very species specific. I work with ball pythons. I work with leopard geckos. I work with carpet pythons. I work with whatever. Or you can go the other way and be very widely distributed. Now, the advantage of being widely distributed is that, or diverse, I should say, not distributed, but diverse, is that when one thing goes up, you're okay because the other thing is down or whatever. You know, if you're into ball pythons and the ball python market goes soft, you're screwed. Now you've got to cycle into something else. And by the time you cycle into it, you probably have you missed the train. So in the 32 years, coming up on our 33rd breeding season as BHB, we've seen colubrids cycle probably 3 or 4 times where they were like super hot and then no one wanted them. And then super hot and no one wanted them. This latest run right now is the biggest colubrid boom I've ever seen, ever. I've never seen anything like this. I mean, you know, prices have quadrupled, sometimes up to 10 times the price with some colubrids. They sell so quick, it's not even funny. I don't know what the longevity of that colubrid, but my point is if I would have cycled out of colubrids every time, I would then have to have geared up back into colubrids. And by the time I geared up and we're producing, that cycle might have been already over or at the end. So I think diversification works for me. Does it work for you? It depends. It depends on your space. It depends on your time. It depends on your workforce. If you can do it yourself, do you have to hire people? Do you have the room to hire people? The blah, 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 blah. Do you have the outlet to sell your animals and so on like that? But neither way is right or wrong. It's just what's worked for me is diversification, but I've also seen other people be very species specific and do very well.
Damn, son.
Can we rail this in?